let's cross beyond our borders now, and as the Zimbabwean election draws near, economic hardship is still forcing citizens to look outside of that country for opportunities. Desperate and frustrated citizens have been heading to countries like South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and as far afield as New Zealand and the United Kingdom, among other countries. Zimbabwe, the Congress of Trade Unions in that country says the unemployment rate currently sits at 90%. Well, let's speak now to the chairperson of the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition, and that's Peter Mutasa, who speaks to us from Zimbabwe. Mr. Mutasa, thank you very much for your time. At a time when the world is warning of the high cost of living crisis, Zimbabweans will tell you that we have seen this movie before. How would you describe the ordinary life for Zimbabweans?
Yeah, so thank you very much for inviting me. The ordinary life for Zimbabweans is terrible. We are in a crisis, and unfortunately, we've traveled this path before. We know it's not bearable. We know it's very, very difficult for ordinary people to eke out a living under the circumstances. We have a high inflation rate, official of 175%, but we know this is managed inflation figures. Unofficially, the inflation rate from other sources is around 1,220, and that means workers' disposable incomes have been severely eroded. Many people are failing to provide food for their families. Some people are only having 1 meal a day. Those who are fortunate are having 2 meals a day. If any member of the family falls ill, you are not able to provide for medical care. Majority of our people, over 93%, are not on medical aid. Only a privileged few, around 7%, are on medical aid. So when you have an ailment in the family, you just watch your family member get eaten away or dying because you can't even access medical care. Many kids in this winter, they are going to school without winter uniforms, and it's painful for parents to watch your kid going out in the freezing weather, but without warm clothing. But the parents can't do anything about it. Many families are also breaking down. Of late, we have witnessed many cases of mental health, people who are committing suicide because they can't make ends meet. So it's terrible. We are under a difficult situation at the moment.
Yeah, we are reading reports, Mr. Mutasa, that Zimbabwe has recently done away with load shedding. Do you think that that is going to go some distance in turning the economic fortunes of your country?
Many Zimbabweans sadly do not believe that that is factual, because they know that each time when we are going for elections, there is a lot of propaganda around the country from the political players. So yes, we know there were some developments in Wanke and Kariba where we were doing our upgrades and where we were also constructing new generators and which would build new capacity for our electricity generation. But the timing, many people are suspicious of the timing because it's coming around election time. So everyone is saying, let's wait and see. But we all hope that this may be true and it can be sustained, because we've seen how the load shedding has devastated our manufacturing. The manufacturing sector was saying there was a dip of 14.8% in terms of our manufacturing capacity. And everyone also in the manufacturing and retail sector, they are complaining that there's been a dip in domestic aggregate demand, which is a result of many other factors, but also mainly the shortages in electricity. So electricity is exacerbating the challenges that we are already facing as a nation. So we hope that this new development may be sustained.
Yeah. The elections are fast approaching in Zimbabwe. Next month, in fact, will be that period. 23rd of August is the exact date that we are, I think, all working with and looking forward to. But before we talk about the upcoming election, let's review the work of the Mnangagwa administration. And I'd like to focus the attention, seeing that we're talking about the economy, let me focus the attention on portfolios such as Treasury, for example. Professor Xoli Mngambi, the inclusion of people like him, it was hoped that he would do something to turn the Zimbabwean economic situation around. Has he been effective? Mr. Mutasa, are you still there?
Yes, so I missed you a bit, but the evaluation of the Mnangagwa government should be compared probably to the Mugabe last tenure, because when they came in, they said they wanted to address the many challenges that we were facing during the Mugabe regime. And when they came in, Mugabe somehow stabilized the exchange rate market, the foreign exchange market. Mugabe had also managed to stabilize issues to do with the prices of goods and services. For example, when they came in, a loaf of bread was going for $1, and in some instances, a loaf of bread was going for 50 cents. But come fast forward to now, the foreign exchange market is in a crisis. Professor Xoli Mngambi robbed many Zimbabweans in 2019 when he abruptly and without consultations, all of a sudden changed the people's bank balances, which were in United States of American dollars, into a local currency that has since devalued to from 1:1 with the United States of America dollars in 2019 to 1:5,395 officially. But in the paro market, which is the most used market, it is now trading at 1:8,000, and in other cases 1:9,000 or 10,000. In that regard, they've dismally failed. People have lost their savings. Workers have lost their pensions. Many people lost out in terms of their business opportunities, which went down. So yes, it's failed dismally. But if you also look at the wages of workers, during Mugabe time, teachers were earning $540, but currently some teachers have earned less than $20 in terms of basic salary. Many government departments are paying what they are calling a COVID allowance, even though we are out of COVID period now, because they cannot sustain salaries that were obtaining during Mugabe. Security guards are earning less than $80, which is almost 1,600 rands. Domestic workers are earning less than 1,000 rands. And this against a bread basket of $440-something.
Yeah.
So people are in misery. Xoli Mngambi has failed. The government has failed everyone.
On the score of corruption, we saw a documentary flighted on one of the international news channels. How would you rate the Mnangagwa regime on the score of corruption?
We have always been complaining about Mugabe regime's corrupt tendencies. But what we are witnessing today is sorrowful. The Mugabe regime, yes, was involved in a lot of corrupt scandals, but the magnitude of corruption that is now obtaining currently is quite sad. We are now in a mafia state where criminal organizations, in my view, are controlling almost all sectors, whether it's petroleum, whether it's banking, whether it's insurance, whether it's in artisanal gold mining. Things are done in an opaque way that gives opportunities and arbitrage opportunities for the elites and their cronies. So in terms of corruption, Mugabe has been overtaken by miles by the current regime. They don't mind what citizens say because they control everything using the barrel of the gun and state security. So there's no transparency in terms of public finance management. The tenders are given to their cronies, and gold sector is controlled by their cronies. If you look at every aspect of life, it is now being controlled by those who are in the ruling elites and their families, and the majority are living in misery. So in terms of corruption, we've witnessed much worse than what was obtaining during Mugabe. Mugabe's corruption was kindergarten. Emerson Mnangagwa's government's corruption is way out of this world.
In your view, Mr. Mutasa, who might be the likely savior of Zimbabwe?
The people of Zimbabwe have no individual who can save them. We need to agree and appreciate that we are dealing with an entrenched authoritarian regime, which is basically a military regime. And this military regime took power not through an election, it took power through a coup. And it is determined to ensure that it stays for as long as it can. So we just do not have anyone who can save us. Not even the elections can really save us. We need to make a resolve as citizens, like what the people of South Africa did during apartheid, like what we did when we were fighting against colonial regime and colonial rule. We need to collectively understand that we are our own saviors, and we need to have collective efforts towards getting out of the quagmire that we are in. No one else can save us. We need to start organizing ourselves, mobilizing ourselves, and protest, and make sure that we reinstate the constitution that the military dictatorship has taken away, because currently all our constitutional rights have been taken away. We can't protest. We don't have the right to freedom of expression, freedom of association, and even freedom of assembly. All those rights have been curtailed and taken away from us. We need to save ourselves.
Can I ask you this final question, and very briefly, if you can, because based on what you have just said in this last answer, it would seem to me that you are not assured a free and fair nor credible election next month. What might be your appeal to SADC and the African Union?
The elections have already been rigged. Daily we are seeing the state banning rallies for the opposition. We are seeing the police carrying out its function in a partisan manner, benefiting the ruling elites. We are also seeing all the state institutions, including traditional chiefs and the state institutions like Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, projecting and behaving and practicing in a partisan manner, benefiting ZANU-PF. So SADC and AU have to go back to the drawing board, to their election observer mission. All the recommendations that they made in 2018 have not been implemented, and that is the starting point. So we are calling for preventing diplomatic intervention, where we need the election observers now, because the elections have already started with the campaigning. We also need the SADC and AU to ensure that they send mediation and to mediate between the political players, so that we avert the political violence and possible mass murders during these elections. But the starting point is their own election observation mission reports. All the recommendations that SADC and the EU came up with, if they can be implemented now, then we can possibly save the situation and see ourselves having some hopes, rays of hopes of a free and fair election. Without that, the elections are already rigged, and we may possibly see bloodshed if there's no intervention from SADC and African Union.
Chairperson of the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition, thank you very much for your time. Peter Mutasa there. Well, very grim picture painted by Mr. Mutasa.